In a small town of green fields and old houses, Daniel was the person everyone knew, but no one truly saw. If a bicycle chain snapped or a heavy crate needed lifting, the town didn't seek a tool, they looked for Daniel. He never said no, believing that every yes was a brick in the wall of a good reputation. But while he was busy fixing the town, his own world was quietly falling apart. His garden was overgrown, his roof was failing, and his windows remained cracked for months. Every night he returned home covered in other people's sweat, too exhausted to address the mounting wreckage of his own life. This is the logic of the availability vacuum. When a person provides help without limits, they don't just meet a need, they generate a compounding demand. The center cannot hold when every surrounding node is permitted to draw from its energy without restriction. The breaking point came with a sudden, violent storm. As the sky turned heavy and black, Daniel ran out, not to save his own property, but to help his friend Oliver secure a shed full of equipment. By the time Daniel returned, the rain was a steady pour, and his garden was a muddy graveyard of broken plants and ruined furniture. He sat on the steps, staring at the mess, realizing he had traded his own sanctuary for his neighbor's convenience. His mother watched him from the doorway and offered the only observation that mattered. "Daniel, today you saved everyone's things except your own." This is the paradox of unchecked kindness. It doesn't actually build a stronger community. It simply creates a cycle where the giver becomes a victim of their own altruism, and the community loses the very person they rely on. Seeking an answer to his exhaustion, Daniel visited Mr. Harris, a retired teacher. Daniel didn't complain about the work. He complained about the emptiness. He felt tired not from the physical labor, but from the people themselves. Mr. Harris pointed to the river moving slowly beside them. A river is a vital resource. It provides life to the trees, the birds, and the farms along its path. It is useful because it is contained. This diagram represents the ideal. The blue river flows between defined banks, delivering nourishment exactly where needed. But when the banks vanish, the river loses its path. It becomes a flood, destroying the farms and trees it was meant to sustain. Kindness without boundaries isn't a gift, it's a disaster. Harris proposed a quiet experiment. For the next 7 days, Daniel was not allowed to say yes immediately. He had to pause and ask himself if helping would harm his own time or peace. If the answer was yes, he had to say, "Not today." The first test came at noon the next day. Oliver arrived, asking Daniel to help move a heavy box. Daniel looked at his own broken fence, a project months overdue, took a breath, and said, "I can't. Today I need to fix my own fence." Oliver left looking upset, and the silence that followed felt heavy with guilt. But as Daniel spent the afternoon driving nails into his own fence, the guilt was slowly replaced by a sense of ownership over his time. He was learning that a boundary is not an act of aggression. It is the necessary structure that allows a person to be helpful without being destroyed. Over the following days, Daniel stayed the course. He politely declined small favors and redirected that recovered time into his own home. He cleaned the gutters, weeded the garden, and fixed the broken windows. The bone-deep exhaustion didn't vanish overnight, but for the first time in years, he wasn't adding to it. By stopping the constant drain of minor requests, he finally allowed his energy levels to stabilize. Then the rain returned. This time, the storm found a weakness in Daniel's roof, and water poured rapidly through a jagged hole in his ceiling. He looked toward the door, half expecting a neighbor to knock, remembering the hundreds of times he had been the one to arrive in the rain. But the street remained empty. No one came to help. Instead of feeling the old bitterness, Daniel felt a strange new surge of strength. He didn't need to wait for a yes from someone else. He climbed up, tools in hand, and fixed the roof himself. This shift was not without friction. Neighbors were initially frustrated by his new absence, but as his no remained consistent, something changed. Oliver began solving his own problems. The neighbors stopped treating him like a utility and respected his time. Weeks later, Daniel's cottage stood as a different place. The garden was blooming, the fence was straight, and the roof was sealed. Daniel himself looked different. His face was fresher, and his laughter no longer sounded like a mask for fatigue. When Mr. Harris returned, he saw the transformation. He reminded Daniel that by stopping the infinite yes to the world, he had finally said yes to himself. The world will consume as much of you as you allow it to. Boundaries are the only way to ensure that your time, your mind, and your heart remain your own. People will only respect your limits once you decide to protect them yourself.